Hello, this is Richard Anderson, and this is a little tutorial of the cover art for ImagineFX. Here I usually start these sketches out knowing whether it's black and white or if it's color. I rarely work just going from black and white to color. I feel like I lose a lot of information. So, as you can see on the left-hand side, I have a little color palette pre-set up before I started drawing, and then I know obviously I'm making a woman, and using a very base skin tone value, kind of a neutral color. And yeah, so normally this is how I sketch gestural drawings. I'm using a palette brush, which you will find if you're watching this in the brushes that are also included in this tutorial. I do recommend that when you are messing around, I see a lot of people just wanting other people's brushes, and people don't want to actually learn how to make their own. I'm a big believer, like you experiment, you get a couple brushes, you see how they're made, and you experiment and you try to make your own. I enjoy drawing with this kind of a palette type brush. What it does is, when you're drawing, I know which lines are going to be thick and which lines are going to be thin, and it helps me quickly describe shape and form. There's no, except for practice, there's no trick to this. It's really, you just start to learn how to quickly describe whatever you want, what you're trying to draw, and it's practice and practice, and over time it's almost like a muscle memory. You know that you're going from top to bottom, it's going to be thin, from left to right it'll be thick, and you're turning your brush, and yeah. So here you can see where I basically have blocked out the gestural form of this woman, trying to make her look very tall and confident stance, and I recommend that you usually have some sort of reference pose. If you are not very confident with drawing things out of your head, so with saying that, I recommend, especially if you're learning, to use as much reference as possible. Like people used to say, oh, I did this and I used no reference. I usually make kind of the joke, well, it looks like it because it doesn't look very good. And with saying that, I'm also contradicting, because I do a lot of drawing without reference as well. I just, usually when I'm sketching characters like this, I'm kind of just drawing stuff out of my head. Playing off of forms and kind of ideas. But if I know for a fact usually something's coming, I try to set up a good reference folder, get about 4 or 5 images that describe what I'm going for. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to get these experiment. It's like everything is. It looks like it's like always like quick strokes, quick strokes. Sometimes I will do multiple, quick stroke, until I find that perfect one. Like I'll erase, I'll do it, I'll erase, I'll do it again, I'll erase. Like, it's something, I don't know. I guess is just like the way I enjoy drawing, and what I like about, like I feel like with this shape I just made, I think I kind of nailed it in the first try, but if I didn't, I would have erased and tried again and did 4 or 5 strokes, because I know I want to just describe that shape with as many as, basically not as many as with the least possible strokes to describe what I want. And I kind of always go with that kind of economy in what I'm doing. Yeah, there's really not too much to say here. I'm just pretty much sketching out, using this very neutral value in color to just block everything in. This is a good practice too. Like even if you have to go into like more details, I like to use this as in like really quickly sketching out a basic, and then sometimes I will go over the top with like a line drawing, an actual like outlining everything for concept work that I've done in the past. This is more of an illustrative, experimental piece. Sorry, style. So it won't be any outlining, but it's a good technique to use for concept art. And the one thing about using these palette brushes is that you can get these very interesting and dynamic shapes that you can't get when you're using your just run-of-the-mill round brush, or even some of these other big, more traditional like style. I make a lot of these brushes. I will sketch. You can see on YouTube on Flaptrap's art channel that I draw with the ink brushes a lot, traditional style, and that's actually the way I learned how to draw. And then I tried to convey that and bring that into Photoshop. And this is why I mean it's good for you to experiment with brush making, because I've made a couple brushes that basically I wanted to mimic what I was doing on ink with a calligraphy pen and a couple of my flat wide brushes, and I've gotten close. They're not perfect, and it's going to be really hard to make anything perfect, the effect you get in traditional and bringing it to digital. But I am happy with a few. Like the one I am giving to you guys here is one that I feel like is works pretty well with the texture and everything that you get from traditional drawing. You see I've got guide rulers on here, the blue lines. Those I don't usually have those unless it's for a book cover, or for instance this is for a magazine cover, and I know that how the magazine is laid out, that in general the illustration should be within these guidelines from where some of the text will be, or like the bleed and everything. So yeah, just if anybody was wondering, those aren't, I don't always have them there, but just in this case I do. I just wanted to make sure that I was drawing her within kind of the guidelines for the cover. Yeah, I'm continuing to just obviously block this out. I just want to convey a little bit with the dogs. I was told originally, I didn't know that, but then later the editors wanted me to make them mechanical dogs, and I want them to be gestured. Like the main focus is on the woman, and that's why you can see I'm not completing like the back legs of the dog or anything like that. While I'm drawing this, I mean, there's pretty much, but I guess I could tell a little bit about myself. Um, I I started. I went to art school in 2000. I did 3D animation. It's or an animation course because we did 2D animation as well, and it was a quick 2 year school. And there I kind of I studied that. I basically just concentrated on drawing, and I learned a little bit of 3D because I knew to get into the industry, um, I knew I couldn't just get in as a concept artist or anything. I wasn't good enough, so I just studied some 3D stuff, which was very valuable. And 2003, I got my first job as an environment artist working on Guild Wars franchise, and I worked as an environment artist making rocks and ground textures and wagons and swords and stuff for about 5 years, and then um, I started, and then I was doing a little bit of concepting on the side as well. A lot of the stuff I built, I would concept, and then finally they moved me to a concept artist full time. And so I worked there till 2011, and then I moved to MPC in London to work on film projects, learning a lot about like matte painting and more photorealistic uh, artwork done for film and visual effects. In 2000, that same year, I went to Frame Store and I worked on a few projects, Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor, um, and then after what was it, 2013, I moved to I got a job at Rocksteady on the Batman Arkham Asylum series, working on the Arkham Knight. I came at the very end of the project, so there wasn't a lot of concepting to be done for the main game, but I worked on a lot of DLC work. And then I worked there until 2016, and then I just in November I started to just go full time freelance in my own company, Flapdrops Art, and that's what I've been doing ever since, working on random things from commercial pitches and film work and illustration and book covers and a little bit of concept art, which is funny. I've been a concept artist for just so long, and then when I go freelance, I don't really, I do a lot more illustration work than I do concept work. Okay, and here so I went with a darker. I like to use a red or like what's the I kind of like to use a red neutral um, color to kind of block in more of the detail work after like a fleshy tone. You can use any color you want. I obviously it's Photoshop, it's digital, so you can change it anytime you want. I just do this. I think I'm attracted to traditional illustrators from kind of like a golden era of the 50s and 60s and 70s, and I kind of just see how they drew, and you see a lot of oil painters actually when they're blocking in, they use these, especially for portrait drawing or something. They kind of use these color tones. And this is a personal thing. It's just I like the way it looks. I always recommend that with students learning as well. Is to I know that like the big websites, ArtStation, etc. The it's so easy to get sucked into this world of like looking at what everybody's doing, and then I did the same thing with conceptart.org back in the day, and you would just see and you're like, oh, I want to be like this and this, and it actually helped me a lot kind of expanding and looking beyond those websites and looking back and finding older illustrators, and a lot of time people are like comic artists and just people that you know aren't always on those sites, and you'll find the like a lot of inspiration that might set you apart from other artists, which is a very important thing when you're becoming an illustrator, is to make your voice heard, to not draw like you know, not exactly draw like everybody else's who their heroes are. I heard I went to a talk and I heard actually a woman who worked a lot for Disney, and she was hired by Disney because she drew nothing like Disney. And a lot of people, she said, a lot of problem with the students or the portfolios they would see is that these kids, they'd want to come in and they feel like they need to draw like Disney style to get offered, and these art directors don't want that. They want you to have your own style, and they will fit you into like their little spot that they want, you know, if they like you, but they want to see you draw different. They need people to be different as possible. And yeah, it's always like and I think that's important for illustration as well. If you want to do book covers, you need to make sure your style totally pops out, because that's the whole point. They want your book to look unlike any of the other books on the shelf. So yeah, I just expand, like do some research. It's I mean, honestly, it's like, especially with Pinterest and stuff, it's like so easy to be like, oh, I like this painting, and then you kind of go down this rabbit hole of finding all sorts of different styles and people you've never heard of from other countries. I remember finding like all these crazy good Spanish comic book artists from the 80s, and their ink work is incredible, and it's yeah, it's just fun. I would have never ever heard of these guys, and it's just research a bit. This is where I'm starting to block in the clothing. I know that we kind of wanted her to have like a cool dress. I don't know if it's futuristic or anything yet. I just kind of want her to look cool. I want her to look hot and cool, but obviously you don't fuck with her because she's got these giant dogs. Which I don't know why you'd fuck with her anyways, but you know what I'm saying. I learned how to. You can see that I'm kind of working from light to dark. This is actually when you work traditionally, like with markers. That's kind of the way you draw with that. It's not kind of the way, it is the way you draw with markers. You work light, like you get the you work with like a 20 or 30% gray, and then next you move to a 50% gray. And say if you just pick your three values, and then you work with a 70. Like it's like you're kind of doing overall blocking out, and then you go like blocking the shadows, and then the core shadow, and you know, like kind of, that way you know where like your bounce light is and your rim light and everything that you're putting into your drawing. I don't know where I exactly. It's funny that I didn't actually. I never learned that in a class or anything. I literally just think I could see drawings I liked, and then I kind of saw that I don't know. You can just kind of pick. If you really study a piece of art, like you can kind of pick there, like you can see that they are drawing in a certain way sometimes. See, I love these shapes that I can make with the palette brush. You see that? You just down, up, and you get these cool thick and thin, and the texture and the bleed out and everything. And yeah, this is what's funny. As an artist, I love the process. I love when things happen, like you draw in this mark or just this react, like something pops out and you're like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then you just, this is why I kind of do this every day, because I'm just like, I love that feeling of like, I did that, I did all this, and then honestly, the end product I have, and I don't know, I don't necessarily think it's bad, but I don't care so much about the it's not that I don't care. I like the process of making stuff more than I like the end product. I know that it's got a purpose, the end product, and I don't want people to like just destroy things I've done. But at the same time, it's like the creation process is what I find most attractive of making. I guess this is why, yeah, naturally I just love doing it. Unless you're doing a really bad job, which this happens to all of us as artists, and you end up hating what you're doing. But um, you know, tomorrow's a new day, and then you do something you really love, and then the circle starts all over again. Yeah, still just trying to play with I zoom out there. You see, what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to look at the shape relations of like kind of the ratio of like clothes to skin. Like it's kind of a composition of itself, being like thick and thin, making sure not all. There's a variety of shapes and forms and like the silhouette and uh, between how like much the negative space there is between the dress and the stockings, or am I going to put stockings, or should I go full on super high boots, or it's like good to give your eye variety. Like it's such a plain. It's a like her dress is a way of resting a little bit for the eye. It's just a kind of a framing silhouette, and then you go down and I make these cross hatchings with tights because it's kind of a nice variety of like noise to add, and then another break on the boots is another flat part of the image. Yeah, I went back with the sepia. That's the tone, the color. I don't know. It was the name kind of blanked out of my head, but I'm kind of going back in and drawing with that color. I think it has a nice relationship with the blue, and I wasn't quite sure about her smile, so on a new layer, I'm kind of messing around and seeing if I can draw something. I don't know. Maybe I thought she looked too happy, and I don't know how happy I want her to look. So I'm just. This is where I'm experimenting. I'm like, oh, maybe if I just make it a little more of a smirk, or just say tape over her mouth. Trying a different brush. See if I did. It's weird because I want to. yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying. I'm like, I don't know how happy I want her to look, or yeah, I think I like. Actually, I was like, oh, the smile I did does look good. It's where you kind of second guess yourself a lot. Especially when I go into some of these and I don't have an exact clear vision of exactly what I want. I know the idea a bit, but it's like this is where you just kind of sketch and you play with some things, and then if something pops out and it looks good, then you run with it. You can see that I load the selection of the shape and color like on layers before, and that way it just draws in. There's different ways you can do this with masking, da 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 da, or like even holding Alt and clicking in between the layers. It will just be focused on the layer below it. So yeah, I do that on top, and then it's like makes me available to like erase away for like folds and edges and. Yeah, now I'm starting to work on how these. I don't want to make them super robot dogs. I just kind of want to have it implied a bit. I feel like if I went super robot dog, it would look kind of lame. And yeah, So they're just going in with the same kind of blues and putting in the details where needed. Yeah, I like to use an opaque round brush to erase to get that more solid hard edge and dynamic shape. You know, and I did realize on this tutorial, and sorry about this, I work with two screens, and on my Wacom tablet, I actually have it mapped to like my full screen, and then just a section where I put my layers and my navigator window, and so it's right on the second screen slightly. And I didn't really think about that until after I already recorded this. That so you can't see, but the layers are pretty straightforward. It's literally I painted on a layer. Next layer is the gray. Next layer is the blue, and it's just literally it's like that until I'm pretty confident, and then I will like merge all of those layers into one, and then work on top of that. Especially when it's a simple sketch like this. For a client or a real illustration, I'll always keep everything separated just in case if I need to edit some things. But when it's such a simple image as this one, it's it's very like just a pretty fundamental sketch. Then a lot of the time I will keep it after a certain stage. It'll just be one layer because I'm not too worried about the information. I want to see what she looks like with black hair. Maybe even black dress. I'm not so sure about the blue, but blue. This is a good way. Black, and when you have the blue, you notice if you erase out, you always have that blue highlight. It's a good little trick to show a little. Shine to it, like it's like a leather or something. I don't know. Trying to make it. Just trying to see. Here I'm using the layer on top. I'm using a darken layer, which I'm not so sure about. But this is where I say like I'm experimenting with like I'm not. I didn't have a definite plan, but I just am like trying to see different things. But I know like blues and stuff are complementary as yellow, so let's give that a whirl. I think I switched the layer to another. It's a color dodge layer here. Just big because I know it's on a different layer. I can erase away whatever I want. And the good thing is, it's something that's good to do sometimes is layering and layering and layering, and it kind of adds like a nice texture and a nice look. Yeah, see, I like some of these shapes I'm making. It makes it not look so dark. It's a little bit more poppy, which I feel like with her stance and her smile and everything, she is very like. It's a lot more, it's very much, it's more playful. Maybe it looks a little too 80s. I know that there's a kind of a technical look with it. I mean, she's got mechanical dogs. So, I'm trying to play around with like, oh, maybe just imply like kind of a techie shapes or something in here. But I don't know if it'll work. I don't know. Because then it starts to also look like 80s glam rock or something. And I don't think that's exactly what we're going for. Funny, as soon as I make that shape, it totally looks like a 60s, like, I don't know, like go-go dancer or something with that V collar. And so I'm not mad at this. I don't know if it works. I feel like the dark, maybe the black's too black. Let's see what those tights. And you see here like exactly what I was saying before, where I'll make a mark, make another mark. It's like I'm searching for that one descriptive stroke that kind of gives a sense of life and style to it. And like I say, that's not for everybody, and this is the important thing about being an illustrator. You kind of have to just be confident with what you're doing, and this is just the way I like to do stuff. I think I just have a natural instinct of I just like that kind of stuff, and the artists I'm attracted to do that kind of similar work. Yeah. I don't know, I feel like I'm getting something here. I like the play off of the yellow and the blues. It's funny because it really pops out to me like a little bit like poppy, and I know it's a bit 80s, but and maybe it's because I was influenced by I watched a awesome show on Netflix called Glow. I recommend it. I found it to be hilarious, and me being a child of the 80s, it's I think it's funny you watch that and then I'm drawing this the next day, and it kind of like it's obviously still in my head. that kind of 80s look. I'm playing with saturation. Now I'm going through layer modes. I'm just holding shift plus or minus, and you just click, 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 and it goes through, and maybe something happens, maybe nothing happens. It's always something I do to just check if something pops out to me, and I'm like, oh wait, I didn't think of that. That looks cool. And then sometimes, yeah, you don't. Nothing looks, it looks fine the way it was. So. Let's try to clean this up so it doesn't look so sketchy, or construction lines and stuff. Try to clean those up. And okay, here I'm on the darken layer, and try to do a variety of strokes and directions. It'll give your characters, it gives your drawing a little bit more rhythm. And when they use these words, principles of art and stuff, it's kind of, I know it's kind of a little bit like ugh, but it's just kind of the best words to use to like convey like, why is this interesting. It's a little bit of variety in, like, you're looking from this shape, this line, to this line, and the when you go from that straight diagonal of her breast, and then the rhythm strokes, and they're kind of going around down to her waist, to her hand, it helps lead your eye through your drawing. And that's something that, like, you just kind of learn over time, like it almost becomes instinctual in the back of your head when you're doing stuff. It's like, I just know that this kind of feels right. But I still, I mean, the one thing is I don't like the color, so I already know right now I'm gonna get rid of it. Just tidy up, clean some things up. Excuse me. Yeah, so I duplicated the layer. Everything's on top. I Control J, which just duplicates the layer on the exact same spot as the previous layer. And I wanted to play with the values. I feel like she might be a little bit too contrasty. Yeah, because when you zoom back, it's like her dress is so dark. It's too much of a black spot, you know? Yeah, and like this, it's an experiment. I just feel like her dress was way like I don't know, it's just too dark, and so try to do something to. Here, yeah, you can just play with the hues. I kind of like this, the blue, but maybe it's a little bit, yeah, too retro. Neons. Hmm. Yeah, I feel like the gray, this is kind of helping. A little neutral, and then we got a high saturation of the yellows at the top, kind of framing her face and her hair and the top of her dress there. And then it kind of like calms down the rest of the character. Yeah, this looks good to me. Yeah, put it on lighten mode. Yeah, and then you get a little bit of that texture that you had before in the back. Gives it a little bit of folds and form in the dress. It's nice. Yeah, and then here I just start putting in some of the more final touches, trying to put a little put a little shadow. This is what I'm playing with. This shape, diagonal shape, compared to what's in the background with the dogs. It's like there's the vertical line and then a little diagonal shape. This is what I mean by it helps bring out a little bit of form and contrast and style, rather than just being like, oh, here's a line and that's the edge, you know. Um, and you kind of just learn this with like practicing and just doing as much drawing as possible. Using an overlay layer and just kind of seeing, little forms here and there. Like, it brings a little contrast, but not too much, just enough to kind of give it a little bit of that like watercolor look, you know? Yeah, some of this looks nice. Yeah, so I'm trying to just bring a little bit more form, just kind of finalizing, so drawing a little bit. Well, form, like the overlay is nice because it gives just a little bit saturation, or maybe you lost too much. Yeah, it gives that little bit of variety. Yeah, this really just trying to put in more. I know it's not a detailed drawing, but it's good to just kind of clean up a bit. And this is all comes down to personal taste, what you like. I like to use this opaque brush quite a bit. It just works, yeah, basically just like a pen. I mean, once you make the line, it's pretty much there. Put in these little highlights. Describe this glove a little bit better. Yeah, and so with this, I mean, I'm including a couple of these brushes. I mean, the brushes that I use on this. But like I said, I do recommend. I mean, I always get asked. People are like, "Oh, can we?" And it's just it's funny. I just really recommend that you're like, "Oh, you see these? Obviously, these are pretty simple ones, but it's like you take those and you look at how they're make. You see that I always have my brush palette open as well, so I can adjust things on the go. And this is something that I recommend. Like you can literally just experiment a little bit. One thing is brushes aren't going to fix your drawing problems. Like if you have fundamental problems with describing, light and shape, a brush isn't going to fix that. You need to the fundamentals of drawing. Like I would draw this with a round brush. It's like that is the That's number one. Brushes should almost be second. So I kind of sometimes I just hear always people asking about brushes and can we get this? And I'm like, man, I wish it's you should be working on your drawing, not so much your brushes. But not to be old man grumps about it. I'm not very happy with her hand, so I'm going to try to, just redraw it really quick. Because I know that, like, at her wrist, it's propped up on her hip. Maybe I propped it up a little bit too much. Just fucking implying some fingers here. Yeah. Nice little strap or something just to break up, because I noticed that everything's very clean, like, or the lines are very. It's nice to have like a little shape just jolt out a little bit. Try to bring her necklace back. To tell you the truth, it kind of looks like a zipper as well. Or whatever. Just kind of busting out the final little touches here. Yeah, so I'm starting to get to more finishing point. Feel free. This is pretty much it. Feel free to, with questions or anything, to email me at my website, flaptrapsart.com, or you can email me at flaptrapsart@gmail.com. Also, I have Instagram that I do kind of a daily sketch. I try to stay on top of it as much as possible, at Flaptraps on Instagram. Yeah, and I hope this is helpful or at least inspiring. Uh, and hopefully I will be doing a more exclusive tutorial for on Gumroad for actually like kind of the ins and outs of doing book cover illustrations and kind of how to even break into the industry a bit, or to kind of the more technical things that you don't, it's not just doing illustration, it's like there's some rules and some things to follow. So hopefully I'll have that together soon. But thank you for watching, and I hope that you guys, I really hope it helps, and uh, thank you to ImagineFX for giving me the opportunity. Just trying to put the more mechanical details, not to, like obviously too much, because I don't want it to be noisy here in the dogs. This is one thing about actually doing professional work, is that you get told what to do sometimes, and you have to kind of just like figure. You get told to do all the time, but this is something that like initially it wasn't. I didn't know it was in the plans to make them mechanical, and then the direction was given to make them mechanical. So then you kind of have to improvise, and it's it's not like you just get to do whatever you want, and it's good to, like, especially if you want to be a professional, you definitely have to make sure that you pay attention and you listen to what the client is asking about or what they want changed. Try to put a little funny antenna on them. That will make them definitely look. And this piece is kind of retro looking anyway, so I thought it'd be funny to get in, play with the thing, and actually make them look kind of not almost like the dog from the Jetsons, but just a little bit of humor is fun. Definitely in these things, I don't like to take myself too serious, so it's always fun to draw something serious and then just put a little goofy thing in there. I never quite. Drawing's too fun sometimes to take it too serious, and I love cartoonists. Now I'm just rambling. Put a little collar on them. Actually, that collar is nice. It's funny because I put that collar on him. It adds a little bit of motion and weight. Like you can tell that he's like dropping his neck, or It's funny how the smallest little like piece of detail can definitely make your brain just picture what the dog's next movement would be. And I guess that's where gesturals come, because we know what things look like in the back of our brain, whether we can describe them on a 2D form or not. But it's funny. It's like right when I did that, I'm like, oh, I can picture he's sniffing the ground, the next movement, like within, it's like we build these in our brains. Skinny up this arm a little bit. Maybe it got a little too thick. It's kind of weird. Yeah, it's kind of like you can't really see the back of her arm, so I feel like that might look a little weird, but technically I don't think it's wrong. She could use a little bit of a shoulder though, like not too much, but maybe I'll go on the layer behind. Yeah, and just try to see if something like that looks a little bit more real. So this is, I'm on a layer behind the main picture. So now I can kind of play with a little bit of stuff that might, yeah. It's funny because now it looks like with these lines breaking up the shapes, it looks like I've done masking in watercolor. Obviously I'm not, I'm on the top layer now. Looks kind of cool. Yeah, it's funny because it's more solid colors. It simplifies. It doesn't look so noisy with all the strokes. And that's looking good. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys, yeah, enjoyed the tutorial, and of course, let me know if you have any questions, emailing me at flaptrapsart@gmail.com. And please follow me on Instagram at flaptraps. this is a quick tutorial on some of the brushes I use in the character tutorial for the cover of ImagineFX. It's a quick introduction, like I said, that you do have the brushes, you can go in and play with them, but what you need to do also is just kind of get an idea of how we can make these brushes. The brushes I like to use, I'm going to start out with the regular Photoshop round brush. And you see here, if you press F5, it opens up your brush palette. Basically, yeah, your brush window where you can just mess with all the presets. So what I'm going to do here, first of all, if you see the bumps, the circles, and that's the spacing here, and I like to drop that down. And what I'm trying to do is make something that mimics kind of like a marker or a brush pen that I use in the traditional drawings that I like to do. So I dropped that, and you see here shape dynamics. I don't even know. That's usually builds the thick. So if I change it, it's this shape dynamics. It becomes more like the harder you press, the wider it gets. And so what I like to do is, since it is a palette, I can change the shape here. And this is where it gets a little tricky, where you have to you mess around with the direction. Like obviously this is this. This is this. Down like that. And this actually by itself works pretty well. Let's turn off transfer. I don't want that on right now because I just want to opaque. Like this is where it acts just like a marker would. So in shape dynamics, for the pin that I use in the tutorial, what I do is you got pin pressure on, which is correct, and then in angle jitter you leave that off. Control is what you kind of want to do, and you see there's different options here. There's direction, initial direction, rotation, I'm not going to read them all. Well, I recommend that you mess around and you just try whichever ones might work for you. On this one I'm going initial direction, and what this does is it goes to whatever initial direction that you start, right to left, up to down. And this is where it does get a little bit tricky, and you have to learn how to use it. Is because after a while it'll become almost like a muscle memory to you on where it's at. And this is, let's turn on transfer again, and this is how you have to mess with this part of the actual direction, because here me changing it to this, I don't know exactly what effect I'm going to get from that brush, but over time I've drawn so much with the brushes that I have that I know it's something about this. It's about this. I mean, it changes. It's funny, I try to remake a brush and it's not exactly what I want, but this kind of gives me that almost like a Prismacolor marker or something like that effect that I like. So for instance this, and then in shape dynamics I want the minimum. This is where you change, you see the width changing in the brush here, and I like to have mine pretty wide. So now it's even more like a marker, because markers usually if you're drawing with the bigger the broad kind of palette shape. Okay, so that's about the gist of that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing. And then over here, if you want to add texture, you click this on. I've got a default texture here that it's falling on. And then I have my own all sorts of brush presets and patterns that I could. This is another step where you need to play around with ideas. It's not going to be just turn it on and it might work. And sometimes it might work, it might be perfect right away, but you need to, this is where I mess with, you see all the overlay, color dodge, and I believe this is one that worked pretty well. But you don't even really see the texture per se in this. So this is where you mess with the brightness and contrast, and you can see things are moving down there. Texture each tip. So I turn that off because I'm not texturing. I'm texturing one tip. Tell you the truth, I don't even know what that actually means. I just know, look what it changed something. And there you go. You see, it's just like the marker. And that texture almost gives it like this is a grainy paper look. Or the felt tip. And the harder you press, the more da-da-da-da-da. So this is pretty much it. This is like the marker that I use in the tutorial. It's very slow because this file is quite big. I don't know how big this image is, but and there you go. And that is a quick introduction on making the brush. Hope you like. Cheers.